The Law of One, Session 21. This session is mostly about the second 25,000-year cycle. We are now at the end of the third. The questioner. I have a couple of questions I don't want to forget to ask in this period. I'll ask them first. The first question is, would the future content of this book be affected in any way if the instrument reads the material we have already obtained? I thought it would be interesting to leave this question in, just because, the response is interesting. So anyway, here it goes. Ra. The future communications we offer through this instrument have no connection with the instrument's mind. This is due to two things. First, the instrument's dedication to serving the infinite creator. Second, our understanding that the best way to communicate with minimal distortion is to bypass the instrument's conscious mind, allowing us to communicate without its influence. So in other words, somnambulistic channeling, which is why I like this book so much, or like this material so much, and this also goes for some of Dolores Cannon's earlier works, especially in the Convoluted Universe. The first maybe 2 or 3 books, and then by I think the 4th and the 5th you can see that some of the channeling is more conscious and not as removed from the ego of the one who is channeling or bringing the information or the experiences through. So yeah, I thought it would be a good idea to leave that part in today's reading. Can we call it exploration? The questioner. A little appendage to this. Do you use your vocabulary or the instrument's vocab to communicate with us? Ra, we use the vocab of the language with which you are familiar. This is not the instrument's vocab. However, this particular mind-body-spirit complex retains the use of a sufficiently large number of words that the distinction is often without any importance. I found this quite fascinating too, because I was under the impression that whether the channeling is somnambulistic or not, the entity uses the language that is acquired or that is held by the vessel, by the one who is being channeled through, by the, what do they call it? I can't remember the word that they use, but by Kala basically. But it seems not, which is very interesting. I didn't know that was possible. Questioner. Were there any Maldek entities incarnated in second density before the 75,000-year cycle? Ra, this is incorrect. These particular entities were incarnate in third density in the inner planes, undergoing the process of healing and approaching realization of their actions. The questioner. I don't mean to be covering ground that we've already covered, but there are some points that we have trouble with fully understanding, and sometimes I have to ask the question a different way to fully understand it. Thank you. So at the start of this 75,000-year cycle, we know that the quarantine was set up. I'm assuming then that the guardians were aware of the infringements on free will that would occur if they didn't set this up at that time and therefore did it. Is this correct? Ra, this is partially incorrect. The incorrectness is as follows. Those entities whose third density experience upon Mars was brought to a close prematurely were aided genetically while being transferred to this third density. This, although done in a desire to aid, was seen as infringement upon free will. The light quarantine, which consists of the guardians or gardeners, as you may call them, which would have been to effect thus as was intensified, which would have been in effect thus was intensified. Sorry guys. Questioner. Now, When the 75,000-year cycle started, the lifespan was approximately 900 years average. What was the process and scheduling of the mechanism of reincarnation at that time? And how did the time in between incarnations into third density physical apply to the growth of the mind-body-spirit complex? Ra, this question is more complex than most. We will begin. The initial pattern for third density beings starts in darkness. Think of your density as a state of sleep and forgetting. This is why I always say waking up. I fell asleep and I woke up again. It's definitely not the same as being woke, but you get my point. It's to be aware and conscious of what's going on within and without. This is the only plane where forgetting is necessary. This forgetting allows free will and confusion to influence the newly individual consciousness. The starting entity is innocent, behaving in an animalistic manner, using others as extensions of itself for survival. Gradually, it realizes it has needs beyond survival, companionship, or needs like companionship, laughter, beauty, and understanding the universe. Those are the initial needs. As incarnations accumulate, further needs emerge. Here are the rest, the ones that come beyond. Trading, love, being loved, and elevating animalistic behaviors to a more universal perspective. In the early third density cycles, incarnations are automatic and occur quickly after the physical body ceases. There is little need for review or healing between lives. As energy centers activate more, experiences increasingly involve love lessons. Thus, the time between incarnations lengthens to allow for proper review and healing. At some point, the green ray energy center activates and incarnations stop being automatic. So the questioner, when incarnation ceases to become automatic, I'm assuming that the entity can decide when he needs to reincarnate for the benefit of his own learning. Does he also select his parents? Ra, correct. Questioner, at this time in our cycle, near the end, what percentage of the entities approximately incarnating are making their own choices? Ra, approximately 54%. Questioner, during this first 25,000-year cycle, was there any industrial development at all? Was there any machinery available during this period to the people? Ra, no. However, there were, shall we say, various implements of wood and rock which were used in order to get food and for use in aggression. Questioner, at the end of the first 25,000-year cycle, was there any physical change that occurred rapidly, like that which occurs at a 75,000-year cycle? Or is this just an indexing time for a harvesting period? Ra, there was no change except that which, according to intelligent energy, or what you would call physical evolution, suited physical complexes to their environment. This being the color of the skin due to the area of the planet where entities lived, the gradual growth of peoples due to improved intake of foodstuffs. Questioner, then we have a condition where at the end of the first 25,000-year period, I'm guessing that the guardians discovered that there was no harvest of either positive or negative oriented entities. Tell me then what happened, what action was taken. Ra, there was no action taken except to remain aware of the possibility of a calling for help or understanding among the entities of this density. The Confederation is concerned with the preservation of the conditions conducive to learning. This, for the most part, revolves about the primal distortion of free will. The questioner, then the Confederation gardeners did nothing, I'm assuming, until some of the plants in their garden, shall I say, called them for help. Is this correct? Ra, correct. Questioner, when did the first call occur and how did it occur? Ra, the first calling was approximately 46,000 years ago. This calling was of those of Maldek. These entities were aware of their need for rectifying the consequences of their action and were in some confusion in an incarnate state as to the circumstances of their incarnation. The unconscious being aware, the conscious being quite confused. This created a calling. The Confederation sent love and light to these entities. How did the Confederation send love and light? Precisely what did they do? Ra, there are within the Confederation planetary entities who from their planets do nothing but send love and light as pure streamings to those who call. This is a comforting thought. This is not in the form of conceptual thought, but of pure and undifferentiated love. I just paused to call for some love. The questioner, did the first distortion of the law of one require then that equal time, shall I say, be given to the self-service oriented group? Ra, in this case, this was not necessary for some of your time due to the orientation of the entities. For some of your time. Questioner, what was their orientation? Ra, the orientation of these entities was such that the aid of the Confederation was not perceived. Questioner, since it was not perceived, is it not necessary to balance this? Is that correct? Ra, this is correct. What is necessary to balance is opportunity. When there is ignorance, there is no opportunity. When there exists a potential, then each opportunity shall be balanced. This balancing caused by not only the positive and negative orientations of those offering aid, but also the orientation of those requesting aid. The questioner, I see. I want to clear up a point here then. When was the first contact by the Orion group in years? I am Ra. As we have said, the Orion group attempted contact approximately 60,000 of your years in the past as you measure time. Questioner, I'm sorry, I meant the first attempt in the second major cycle. I'm now working in the second 25,000 years. How many years ago was the Orion group's attempt in that cycle? The Orion group next attempted in more fertile territory approximately 3,600 years in the past, as you measure time. Questioner, in other words, there was no attempt 46,000 years ago by the Orion group to contact. Is that correct? Ra, this is correct. Questioner, as we progress into the second 25,000 year cycle, was this the period of Lemuria? Ra, this is incorrect. However, those who escaped the destruction of Lemuria by natural catastrophe and were thus of Lemurian background continued their learned teachings at locations ranging from your South America onward through the Americas as you know them, and continuing over what was at that time a bridge which no longer exists. There were those in Russia. The tape ends. The questioner comes back. Just to quickly refresh my mind, how many years ago did Lemuria suffer its catastrophe? Ra, this was approximately 50,000 years ago. The origins being approximately 53,000 years ago. The damage being completed in that last small cycle of the first major cycle. Questioner, then did the ending of this first major cycle have something to do with the destruction of Lemuria, or did the destruction just happen to occur at the end of that cycle? Great question. Ra, there is a confluence of energies at the ending of a major cycle. This encouraged what was already an inevitable adjustment to the movement of the surfaces of your planet. Earthquakes. Then, in the second 25,000 year major cycle, was there any great civilization that developed? Ra, in terms of advanced technology, there were no great societies during this cycle. There was some progress among those from Deneb who chose to incarnate in China. Positive steps towards activating the green ray energy complex occurred in many parts of the world, including Americas, Africa, Australia, India, and among various scattered peoples. None of these societies became as great as Lemuria or Atlantis, known for their strong social structures and, in Atlantis's case, advanced technology. However, in South America, there was a significant focus on love. These entities were ready for harvest at the end of the second major cycle without forming strong social or technological structures. This will be the final question of the session. Is there a quick query? And then they go on to have a chat about Carla's positioning and state. Well, that very quickly brought us to the end of session 1. I guess we'll see in session 21, I guess we'll see in session 22 if they continue to clarify. I think he's just trying to clarify some of the things that they may have asked in a more scattered manner in the past. It must be quite difficult to be the questioner of this work, because there's so many avenues that can be explored, leaving others unexplored in that moment, and then having to come back in later sessions to explore the parts connected to previous sessions that were unexplored. But nonetheless, he's doing amazingly. I will see you guys on the next one. Have an amazing evening.